Hi everyone, my name is Wang. Welcome to C.C.Within podcast. And today we have Karen with us. And Karen, I met Karen a few months ago at 2REM station.
Yep.
And Karen is the radio presenter at 2REM. And Karen, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
No worries at all. Yes, I'm Karen Cronin. I'm a broadcaster with 2REM Community Radio in Albury Wodonga. I also am the host of a podcast with a community organisation called Mercy Connect, and that's called Together We Grow, where I meet lovely organisations and talk about all different things there as well. So thank you for having me along.
Yeah, that's no problem. And I'm so grateful that you come here today and we are able to have discussion face to face. And I found we have lots of similarity, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Me too, Chi.
Yes. And so Karen, you mentioned you grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And I wonder what was the beauty standards back then?
It was an interesting time back in the 70s and 80s when I grew up. A very different landscape altogether. So I kind of reflect back on that time, and it seems like it was from another planet, really, compared to what we look at today. So there was sexism, there was racism, there was all sorts of different things happening within the community that was a daily occurrence. It was just what we were used to. It was a very different landscape. Part of that was beauty standards. We grew up in a time where being blonde, being skinny, and being tanned were everything. That was the way to be all these things. I was a redheaded young girl with beautiful red hair, dotted with freckles all over my face. As white, as pale as a sheet all through summer. That was my complexion. But we grew up in that beauty standard where you were told it's not unhealthy not to have a tan. So we were told to go out without sunscreen or anything. You just went out and you got yourself a few good burns, and then you would develop a tan. That never happened for me, but I gave it a red hot try. So you can imagine a few burns under me. And of course, it was an interesting time, but it certainly was. Being blonde was the pinnacle, to be tall and thin. And you are openly encouraged to starve yourself as a girl. You were encouraged to, make sure you don't get that puppy fat and stuff, and there was a real taboo about being fat, or even just growing through into, teenagehood, where your body changes that little bit. That was not acceptable. Absolutely not acceptable. And you learned very quickly to hate yourself and talk bad about your body. When you'd get together with other kids and stuff, it was a little older than it is now, but as teenagers we would get together and talk about our huge thighs and our bums and all the bits and pieces and stuff. We'd make sure we put ourselves down, so that rhetoric kept happening inside our heads.
So you mentioned in your generation you need to be tall, you need to be thin, and you need to have you need to be blonde.
Absolutely.
And also tanned skin.
Yes.
Okay. That's really interesting. And also you mentioned about redhead. So is this your original hair color?
No, mine's underneath it. Mine was a strawberry blonde. So
strawberry blonde.
So it was blonde, but a sort of red-headed version of that. So it wasn't as intense as this. I just love colour now, so I wear it. But it wasn't quite as intense as this. Just a little bit lighter, but the same sort of shade.
The reason I asked that is because I heard stories about being a redhead in Australia.
Yes.
And could you share a little bit more about that? I think many people, they might feel the same way as
Absolutely. Look, honestly, you could call it bullying. Thankfully, I had a pretty thickish skin back in the day, and I had a good sense of humour, and my parents taught me to deflect with humour. But you would get called all the names under the sun. You were the butt of jokes all the time. But the blondes were the dumb ones, and the redheads were just somebody you did not want to be. I had an auntie when we were kids. We'd sit around the table and she'd visit every now and then, and I had a younger brother that had gorgeous dark hair and dark complexion. And then there was myself, my brother, and we both had the red hair, freckles, white skin, just, yeah. So we're all gorgeous in our own way. But my auntie would sit there and my older brother would come into the room and she wouldn't have much to say. And she'd be like, oh, that's a shame. I would be mortified if I had a red head. And my mum would be just shocked, really, really shocked that she would come out and say something like that. I'd walk in and she'd say, oh, well, at least she's pretty. I still wouldn't want to have a red head and stuff, but at least she's pretty. So somehow I ticked the right box at the time. And then my younger brother would come in with the dark hair, the darker olive complexion. She'd say, now, see, that's what I'd be proud to have as a son. And so that people would say these things openly to your face. All the kids would call you, redhead or matchstick. It was just something you grew up with. And when you got older, they just become a little more sexually targeted. It was a tricky time to be in the 70s and 80s as a redhead.
So when you were younger, did you try to change yourself in any way? Because you mentioned about you have white skin and etc. And how did you change yourself?
I had advice from a few people about burning yourself going out in the sun. So I would try that. And they'd say, no, come back and do it again and again and again and you'll get tan. Didn't happen. I would try with my freckles on my face. I was told how ugly they were. And now I think about it, they were gorgeous, but I was told how ugly. So again and again, you'd cut a lemon in half and you'd rub it over your face and hopefully that would sort of bleach them a little bit. So damaging your skin, but you're trying to remove these awful things on your face that you thought were terrible.
Oh, is that freckles?
Yeah, to get rid of the freckles. So to bleach your face, that was one of the ways that people said you could do it. And I don't know if that worked or it didn't, but I gave it a try. And then the other thing was I was taught to either go darker to lose the red or go back to blonde. So you go to the hairdressers, or before that, we would try home remedies at home and you get bleached together and you'd ruin your hair. You try all these different things, a few of us would. None of it worked out particularly beautifully. If you look back at some of the photos from the 70s and 80s, we had the frizzy hair. Some of that could have been from that.
To bring the photos.
I can send some through to you. Different times.
It's just so interesting how we try to change ourselves. Because I grew up in Taiwan, as you know, some of my stories. So for example, when I was young, people they want us to have white skin.
Yes.
Which is totally opposite to you.
Interesting, isn't it?
What I did, because I have tan skin, so what I did is I try to wear makeup, and many people do when they are young. It's like we don't. The reason we have foundation is because we can cover up the wrinkles. It was the reason they create the foundation. But you can see people in the 15 or 18, they start to wear foundation and they have no wrinkles.
It's just bizarre, isn't it, to cover up and change this amazing gift that we've been given. But if you're seeing that it's ugly, you're going to do anything you can to cover it up. And it's really interesting, as you say, that in different cultures, we're going through very similar stuff, but as you say, the standards are just different. That's all it is. And I think it's whatever we are is what we're not aiming to be. It's strange. And there'll be a few people within that population that meet that criteria at the time. And I think also too, over time, these standards change. You know what I mean? They don't stay blonde and tan. There's different ways of looking at beauty and deciding who fits.
Definitely. And I want to clarify when I talk about trying to cover up our wrinkles. I don't mean that I suggest people to cover up their wrinkles, because I think people, they still can age gracefully and beautifully without changing anything. Because if you go to France, you can see lots of French women, they age gracefully and they still look incredibly elegant and beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that I want to clarify that.
I understand.
Yes, I'm just trying to explain the reason for foundation. We want the thing we don't have is
it's the human condition, isn't it? It's the human condition that we always want what's over there. It's whatever we haven't got, that's what we want.
Definitely.
Strange, isn't it?
And you mentioned about you try to you try to go out to the sun to get some suntan, and
Yes.
trying to change your hair color. And so I wonder at what age you started to see yourself differently. Maybe you started to think, oh, okay, this method is not as sustainable as I wanted, because I couldn't keep changing just to please other people.
Exactly. Look, I think for me, up until about the age 11, I think it was a really carefree time. I mean, I got lots of jibes about being redheaded and freckled, but, there are other kids getting called whatever. So it was just, that was part of growing up. But I think it was around 11, 12 that I was aware from media, I guess, from home, I guess, and from my peers, I guess, that I was starting to realise my body wasn't the shape it should be, whatever that means. But I realised that my body wasn't quite the right shape. That some of my features weren't exactly perfect. So that's when I think probably 12 onwards, I started to try and actively change a few things about myself.
Age 11.
Yeah, about that. Yep.
And to what age you started to have self-acceptance?
Okay, so real self-acceptance for me, probably my mid-40s.
Mid-40s. So from age 11 and until your mid-40,
easily,
you're constantly trying to change yourself.
For decades.
For decades?
Yes.
And how did you feel?
Look, I was pretty successful, if you want to call it that, early on. Because as I said, the beauty standard was to be thin, to be pretty and thin, and I knocked that out of the park. I was pretty good at starving myself. I had grown up in a household where my mum was super aware of her weight and how she looked in the world, and I was hyper aware of how that affected her on a daily basis. And my heart would break for her seeing the unrealistic hoops she would try and jump through to meet those standards. So I already had that ingrained in myself. So for decades, starving myself. So that worked a few times. When I needed to, I'd just stop eating for a bit, and voila, I had male attention. So that was winning, I thought. With all the poor choices that come from thinking that the only thing you've got to offer is this. So,
yes,
you make these life-altering choices that aren't always, on reflection, the best for you. But that is life, I think. But yeah, certainly mid-40s before I really went to see anybody about, not just that, but different things were going in my life that I needed to sort of talk to somebody about. But part of that was talking about my body image and how I felt, and sort of over time learning to think differently about myself and talk differently to myself. So when I'd look in that mirror, instead of finding fault and saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do better, it was about finding the good bits. And that took some time too. So it wasn't overnight, it was a process. And some days I have to remind myself, no, we're not going there, we're not doing that. I need to be my best friend. I'm going into the world that can be harsh. I think sometimes, and you would understand this too, not everybody is as kind-hearted as you'd want them to be.
Definitely,
so
yes.
I think you need to go out there with your best friend in tow, and that happens to be me. But that took some time.
That's very interesting.